Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I can read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Our next letter comes from Harry, who wants to talk about his relationship with a girl called Sally. So, Harry writes, I, Harry, met Sally when we were both 26 on January the 1st this year. We had the typical love bomb and shutdown cycle over and over. We were having sex, seeing each other every day for weeks, constantly sleeping over, going on great dates together. We were inseparable for all of January, it seemed like. It was intense and magical, and because I was so enamored by what seemed like the most perfect dating experience I had ever had, I asked her to be my partner, and she said yes. The next week, she ghosted for a few days. I asked what was wrong, and she sent a cryptic text referencing seasonal depression and said she couldn't date me, and said I could come and talk, but she wasn't sure she would change her mind. We're going to come back to that. I replied, okay, and gave it a weekend before seeing her. She revealed that it was not actually seasonal depression, but deep commitment issues. Well, that's accurate. And she was feeling overwhelmed. We agreed we wanted to keep seeing each other, but would take it much more slowly. She began to say things like, I have commitment issues, you've been warned, with regards to her behavior. She added, I'm a shitty communicator. Harry continues to write, I would continue to check in over the coming months, and she would always say the pace was fine. For some context, she has a tattoo of Cupid holding an RPG on her arm, a flaming heart on the other, and a large broken heart tattoo with two skeletons pushing it back together with Emotional Laborers Union in big letters, top and bottom on her thigh. Her father and brother passed when she was about 13. Her mum has vertigo and has been in and out of toxic relationships with abusive drunken men. Her older brother, she was closest with, died back in 2022 in April. But by mid-March, things seemed to have recovered between us. And I remembered one day cuddling on the couch, and when I said, I really enjoy spending time with you, she got up and gave me a big kiss and buried her head back into my chest. The sex was gone since February, and although we stayed relatively affectionate, the stonewalling and distancing started. April, she'd reply once a week. I would text on a Friday asking to see her, and she would reply on Sunday night saying, sorry, dog, it was a lone wolf weekend with a woof emoji. She cuddled me but began refusing kisses. We went to breakfast on the 5th of April, the 4th of May, and she was very touchy and affectionate, but said when she was leaving, sorry, I've been so inaccessible lately. The next week, she texted me, inviting me to trivia night with her friends. We went back to her place and I gave her a teddy bear and said I was thinking of all she was going through. She would not cuddle me that night. I asked if I could tuck her in before I left and she said no, but said, I like hanging though, with a smile, and hugged me goodbye. I texted the next weekend asking if she wanted to hang, and she said, I don't have the energy. I asked again Sunday how she was feeling, and she didn't reply. Next, she ghosted me again. I couldn't take the emotional trauma and left a two-page letter on her door that week detailing the following in summary. Basically, what I wrote was, I'm ending our situationship, whatever name best fits this category. I have intense feelings. I cannot handle the lack of communication, mainly the confusion, but also the pain of seeing you on your phone, fiddling with your Bitmojis, outfit, etc., and seeing you spend time with other people while not replying to me for a whole week at a time and saying you have quote unquote no energy. I carefully acknowledged that this was all my internal feelings and it's not her fault, and she didn't owe me her time at the end of the day. I was just really confused and befuddled by what was happening. I acknowledge all her trauma. I asked if she was just not that into me or sleeping with someone else. Not that I expect that of her, but just so I know that if it's the case, so I can deal with that and move on. I stress that she is the only one I have interest in, and if I wasn't dating, I'd be taking a break and just focusing on my own life, mental health and physical health right now. I talked at length about all the things I loved about her and the wonderful person I knew she was deep down, even if I hadn't known her for very long. I ended it saying, please tell me if you've lost feelings or are seeing anyone else. But if those things were not the case, I'd love to reconnect and be with you when you have more energy to give this relationship and want to live again as a partner with me. A day passed until she sent a short text message saying, I know I'm a shitty communicator, didn't intend to mislead. To be fair, not replying for days or end is the same glorious treatment all my friends and family receive. I know it's a bad habit I'm working on. No, I haven't been sleeping around. Thanks for asking. I had no libido, no interest in dating, no energy to commit. Not sure what else to say. I thought you understood all that and would chill with being platonic. But if everything you said is true, you're probably right to cut it off now. Thanks for being honest, and I really do wish you the best. Okay, we're going to take a pause here. Fuck me. Harry, I'm so sorry that you've gone through this with Sally. Jesus Christ almighty. I'm going to work my way from the bottom and go the way up. Okay, this is a great example of abdicating responsibility. You know what I really hate about Sally's reply is this is a classic line avoidance, sorry, severe avoidance give when they're having a breakup, right? It's this whole, I didn't intend to do this. Well, that's wonderful, but the pathway to hell is paved with great intentions. The impact of their actions, however, seem to get missed in the apologies, don't they? You know, it's not just you are a shitty communicator, Sally. It's that you have been misleading with the lack of capacity for which you could communicate. And no, you're not working on this. Like when she says, oh, I've been working on it. No, you haven't. The fact of the matter is that she justifies that even by saying that her friends and family get the same, amount from her as well too. So she's basically saying you should put up with this. But she didn't tell you that in advance, did she? It's interesting how she sort of, said to you in the beginning, oh, I have commitment issues, be warned, as if to say, it's on you if we date together. No, honey, it's on you. You undercommunicated what those commitment issues meant. You didn't explain yourself properly. Frankly, you didn't do a very good job of, being able to maintain the relationship. And let's call it for what it is. I know, Harry, you wrote this as a situationship. No, it's not. You were very clear about wanting to see each other, so you're in a relationship. Call it for what it is. She, on the other hand, couldn't even maintain being in a relationship after she said yes, because that's when her commitment stuff came up, and blaming it on seasonal depression. Listen, for those of you who don't understand, when commitment phobia or relationship OCD or fear of intimacy, same names, the same concept, hit someone, it's pretty bad. And if you're avoidantly attached, you're already spending much of your time trying to compartmentalize a lot of terrible emotions that have not been dealt with, right? So when you're getting close to someone and you lose control of that ability to shut down the negative feelings for a second, and all this fear comes up about what will happen if we get together. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be betrayed. They're not going to like me. They're going to get rid of me, etc. Right? Very valid concerns and fears, based on childhood trauma. The problem is that it actually can manifest in symptoms of heightened anxiety, depression, because it's all your crap that you haven't dealt with that comes back to the surface and you do feel quite terrible. Not to mention there's also a lot of shame in that too. And so it's very easy for a rationalization to be, I'm feeling this way because of this situation or the relationship, even if a part of you knows it's actually got nothing to do with the relationship. It's just the fact that that closeness triggers you a lot too. So Sally's got a lot of stuff that she's got to work through. By the way, let's not forget those tattoos. Very, very, very explicit illustrations of her history. As Dr. Ramani once said, she wears her trauma on her sleeve. I mean, this is pretty intense. A tattoo with a Cupid holding an RPG on their arm, a flaming heart, a broken heart tattoo with two skeletons pushing it back together with emotional laborers union on it. This is someone who's gone through extensive trauma. Mum's been in and out of abusive relationship. Dad and brother passed away. There's been, from the sounds of it, a lot of, terrible, toxic stuff going on in her life. She's a classic fearful avoidant and quite severe from the sounds of it. And to me, this is so much trauma. On one hand, I do feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for Sally that she's gone through this stuff. However, my compassion ends there on the basis that she's not doing anything with it. And it seems to me like she doesn't want to take any accountability and responsibility for this stuff. So, Harry, I can understand if you've just been completely blindsided by this and just completely taken aback by this entire thing. I also want to focus on some of the things you wrote in your letter, specifically around wanting to know whether she was seeing someone else or if she'd lost interest in you. Okay, I'm going to give this message to everyone, including you, Harry. When you are dating someone who pulls away like this, it's not because they've lost interest in you. A person who's lost interest in you is not going to keep you in the dark. They're hopefully going to communicate with you and say, this just isn't it for me. I wish you all the best. They would never agree to being in a relationship with you like this if they were truly secure. And yes, there are cases of people who aren't that into you who do enter into relationships not out of authenticity. It happens every now and then. Story for another day. However, the thing that I want to stress is, and this is symptomatic of Sally, she's an undercommunicator. You're looking for closure. No one looks for closure, or I don't think many people look for closure in a relationship that's ending when you have answers, clarity, transparency, and honesty. You're not getting that in this relationship. What I find really unacceptable about this is the fact that, it's almost like her need for space to be lone wolf and to just treat you as an option would be the priority for her when she's in a relationship with you. Like as you were describing, like how you were trying to like text her and find out if you could hang out. She's like, oh yeah, not this week. I've got to be a lone wolf. You're in a goddamn relationship and she's dictating that she can't see you for a week on the basis that she's not feeling it without giving you any indicator as to what's going on and when she can try and see you. This is complete negligence of her role in this relationship. And again, I go back to what, she said to you, how she's saying, I warned you, I have a fear of commitment, and also I'm a shitty communicator. Neither of those things absolve her of what's going on. It'd be like saying, I warned you, I have HIV, I have gonorrhea, I have herpes. It's like, honey, that's your issue to worry about, along with Harry's for, within reason, but you need to explain why that's a problem, why that's something you need to work on, why it might affect Harry, how he might feel about it too. I mean, this is just so bad on so many levels. I'm really sorry that you've gone through this because this is ridiculous. I mean, it's just really, really bad. And I also want to say too, I can tell how much you love, Sally. Like, she seems like on one hand, she can be an absolute sweetheart. Like, I mean, she seems like, she can be an absolute, cool, fun girl who's just go with the flow. And she's really, I imagine she's, a blast. I can imagine you guys laughing for days and having so much fun. But at the same time, God, she's got so much undealt with crap that she hadn't, been working through. This is just not okay at all. And I think you did the right thing sending this letter. I'm actually really proud of how you sent this. And I have to say, I've got to give you credit where it's due, Harry. The fact that you called her out on this and actually didn't let this go for much longer suggests to me that you're not doing too badly in terms of asserting yourself. I don't know if you were seeing a therapist at the time and that's how you came to this conclusion to do this, but I think that you worded this. I know you summarized it for me, but I thought it sounds like you worded it quite well. For her to come back to you with a really pathetic paragraph that she did, my God, how invalidating and pathetic. Just no, not okay. Not okay. Anyways, let's continue going on with your letter. We never had any platonic breakup talk ever since January's incident. Of course you didn't. Up until a few weeks prior, I'd asked how the pace was, and she said it was fine. We were cuddling on her couch not even a few weeks ago, and I always asked if I could kiss her or cuddle her. The following weekend, I went for a run around the neighborhood. My brother lives nearby, and she happened to be out on the side street I was running down. She's usually a homebody, and so I was caught off guard. I didn't make eye contact and hooked left and thought she may have not seen me. She didn't mention it. The next day, if she would talk, English, if she would want to talk things out, given a response, and I said it was fine if she wasn't up for it. I also apologized for the emotional nature of my letter, and she said, I don't think I'm up for that. I don't think another talk will bring closure. The letter did not offend or upset me at all. I know emotions can make communication messy. I've been on both sides of this dynamic before, and the best thing we can give each other right now is mutual respect and plenty of space. There is no bad blood if you can maintain that boundary. Okay, I want to take a moment here to explain what's going on here. For a lot of avoidants, particularly that lean dismissive in their attachment style, they can weaponize boundaries to excuse their need to control intimacy. So, what I mean by that is they can use the word boundaries as a get out of jail free card to be like, oh, if you can just respect the distance I'm going to create between us and let me do whatever I want to do and basically just murder our relationship without consequence, then that's good. There's not going to be any problems between us. This is where I find a lot of particularly fearful avoidant attachers have a tendency to run riot, where they use boundaries as a way of maintaining walls, distance, so they can, create that control of intimacy. They control how much you speak to them, see them, how they're feeling about you, all that sort of stuff. It's a case of they get to come back to you whenever they're feeling shitty, but you don't get to have a say in this. A lot of this is about control, power, and also wanting to manage not only the intimacy, but how much they give of themselves to you as well too. It's a very, very manipulative, dodgy thing. Does it mean she has a personality disorder? Not necessarily. It just seems to me like this is how she handles relationships. Like when things go awry and she doesn't want to necessarily end it whilst also not necessarily wanting to take ownership for her behavior, she also finds her get out of jail free card and just creates that space. Space for an avoidant attacher is a very funny concept because I think what they're actually saying is, I need time to regulate. I'm feeling overwhelmed emotionally right now, and being close to you actually makes me feel quite overwhelmed, and I can't handle that. And so I need to step away because I can't deal with this anxiety. That's what space means. And I think they use that condition of theirs of not being able to regulate very well, of needing space, and they weaponize it too to justify their bad behavior. And I think a lot of them sometimes know what they're doing as well too. So it's just not okay. If it sounds like I'm coming down quite hard on Sally, it's because I've actually, for a bit of context, just to kind of inform you, I've been reading this really good book about avoidant abuse. It's talking a lot about the ways in which this coercive form of violence and control can play out from people who have an avoidant attachment, and how it's different from overt forms of violence and control and abuse. And, a lot of avoidant attachers, as I've said before, do know what they're doing, and they've done this before. And so, it's important to understand that while sometimes this can be an unconscious thing, other times, they know they're being shitty. So we can't always let these people off the hook, and it's important to call this stuff out. Anyways, let's keep going. I sent back messages talking about my feelings that she seemingly ignored, and said I would return the earrings I'd borrowed in the mail with a note clarifying my thoughts, as I thought my letter wasn't capturing my feelings clear enough after clearing my head a bit and processing what she had revealed to me. I honestly think you spoke pretty loud and clear, Harry. Got to be honest, I think, she didn't want to listen to you. She didn't want to hear what you had to say. Why? Because she didn't want to, confront reality. She didn't want to take accountability. You didn't need to write another letter. You're now in a pretty bad situation if you felt the need to write more off the back of that. I said I would change my route patterns when running to avoid her physical space for the time being. Oh, yep, you're in trauma bond land for sure now. I also said I would block her everywhere for now to create a digital boundary, and saw she'd already silently blocked me on Snapchat and Facebook without saying anything. I brought it up saying thanks for doing so, as that's a good idea. I had hoped she would acknowledge doing that in some way, but she said nothing. She then said thanks for me blocking her and added, goodbye for now, homie. Good luck with everything you have going on right now. After 3 weeks of no contact, I got anxious about where we stood and sent a vulnerable note in the mail to check in with how she was feeling, saying I still needed space, but that I really valued our connection and wanted to maintain it, even if it meant being platonic currently. And again, asked her to be honest if I was wasting my time with all this. I'm going to talk about no contact in a minute because I have my issues with it sometimes as a practice, particularly with these cases. But anyways, let's keep going. Harry writes, my gut feeling got to me and I panicked about how my message would be received. I unblocked her Venmo and saw that on February the 20th, she'd sent a payment titled Tanks with a heart emoji that I hadn't seen before. It was to the guy she'd sent heart emoji notes and payments to for a good 6 months last year, up until a few weeks before we met. Now, as a side note, she also had a strange BFF relationship with her ex, Nikki, who she saw and texted very often. I added her stupidly to gauge how she was feeling before my check-in note arrived. I wasn't emotionally well. She promptly blocked me without a word. I was even more panicked, flustered at this point, and contacted my friend Regan on Messenger and Venmo to try and explain myself and see if she was upset at me for trying to reach out too soon. I said you probably know her better than I do, and I know she isn't the best communicator, so please tell me if I need to leave this alone, with no reply. Around midnight, one of her friends messaged me on Messenger saying, I am not interested in any relationship, even platonic. You keep insisting the communication issue is on my end, so I'll be clear as possible to make sure there is no confusion. That weekend, you texted me asking if I wanted to hang out, and I replied saying I had no energy. I forgot to reply when you asked again the next day. That following week, you left a manic letter on my door ending a relationship I didn't realize we were in. Asked if I was sleeping with other people, said your life would be better without me, referenced my Bitmoji, and then ended it by saying that you'd still like to date. I'm sorry, but I'm not here for that kind of communication. You could have really cooled off and cleared your head before putting all of that on me. I am also a person who is always in their head overthinking, so I understand to an extent. Nevertheless, I think I responded gracefully and we said goodbye. Then you went for a jog less than a block from the front of my apartment. That was uncomfortable. Then you asked if I wanted to talk, and I replied kindly and said no, and that I needed space. You responded with even more long messages and promised me for another letter in the mail. You still couldn't hear the one thing I was desperately asking for, which was that we needed space, aka no contact. Because again, the letter was a lot. She never once explicitly, so she's saying Sally never once explicitly said that to me, and no contact seemed a bit harsh, I agree. You then said, this is Sally speaking, you then said you would block me, which I appreciated. I went ahead and blocked you as well, not spitefully, just reinforcing the aforementioned boundary. I even used that word boundary. Then 3 weeks later, you messaged my friend and also reached out to her on Venmo as if you were entitled to decide 3 weeks was enough time, and then unblocked and added me on Venmo. I know you like me and I still truly believe you mean well, but you don't seem entirely self-aware about the way you're coming across. I know you've had a few bad breakups. I'm not the only one with trauma. Trauma gives us dysfunctional relationship patterns. I'm working through my own, obviously. The only way out is self-awareness, so own that. I'm clearly frustrated and truly not trying to be a dick, and I don't feel good about saying any of this. If I feel like reconnecting in the future, I will, but please leave that up to me. I'm sorry. I'm going to finish this letter, Harry, and then I'm going to destroy that response. I, Harry, bewildered, sent long messages back attempting to push back and defend myself. A few weeks later, out of frustration, I messaged her friend again asking for my bedroom fan back that was still at her apartment. A few days went by and I stupidly went and left a note on Rachel's door again asking for her to get it back from Sally. The other friend then messaged back shortly saying, hey, Rachel is mailing you your fan. Please stop going into her building and don't message me again. I felt horrible and sent an apology email immediately after that for my other behavior, asking for forgiveness and saying I'd work hard on myself in therapy. She hasn't responded since. I'm blocked on everything except Facebook now, but we're not friends. She's seeing a new guy. She's always dated nerdy or hunky white guys, me included, but the new guy is a very muscular black guy with a Facebook profile of strictly shirtless gym selfies. Thought that was a 180 degree on, sorry, do you believe that's a, let me start that again. Do you have thoughts on that 180-degree shift in dating a different type of person? All right. Jesus Christ Almighty. I'll answer this first. Okay, so um, just wanted to address the whole like shift in type with dating people. It can be. Now, I want to make it very clear to my listeners who are listening to this. Um, when I answer back to Harry, who's asking about the shift from dating hunky, nerdy white guys to muscular black guys. I want to make it very clear that I come at this with not from a lens of race, but more from a lens of patterns. So please take what I'm about to say from the perspective of it's not so much about fetishes, discriminating, or racism. It's more coming from the perspective of that sometimes I have found that with regards to avoidant attachers, they can be very eclectic in the kinds of people that they usually date. On one hand, they might have a very strong type that they typically go for, but then shift and do something completely different off the back of a bad episode with someone as well too. It really depends from case to case, but I don't necessarily, I was going to say like I think for me the thing that stands out more is the pace at which she moved on to someone new. I'm not really too fixated on the change of race in this particular context. So, in that sense, I mean, she could have just as easily dated another white, hunky, or nerdy guy. I don't necessarily think it would have mattered much of a difference if she had dated someone like that, because that's clearly something that she goes for. And it's probably to do with some unfinished business of her own. But yeah, I imagine dating a guy of a completely different race. Maybe this is her way of also trying to just act like you never even mattered and existed. And that's part of avoidant abuse. That feeling of being erased, like your experience never mattered. Like that's a very real thing of like trying to just bury it in the past and act like, oh, we weren't even a thing as well, too. So please, I hope this comes across that this, I think, is more speaking to her behavior rather than dating preferences. It's more to do with, I think, the way in which she's trying to put this in the past behind her. And I actually feel sorry for this guy. I almost like this new guy that she's with. I'm sort of like, dude, I hope you know what you're in for because this is going to be awful if you aren't boundaried and also have a support team. And I really hope he takes care of himself. But let's talk about, this reply you got from Sally. My God. Okay. Let's go by it from the key points. When Sally was basically saying, you know, you keep insisting the communication issue is on my end, so I'll be clear as possible to make sure there's no confusion. That weekend, you texted me asking if I wanted to hang out, and I replied saying I had no energy. I forgot to reply when you asked again the next day. That following week, you left a manic letter on my door ending a relationship I didn't realize we were in. Okay, well, that's just bullshit because she agreed from the very beginning that she wanted to be with you. So lies, and this speaks to, I think, the fact that she has a very distorted reality that she can't live by. That she wants to live by. She is someone who really cannot handle truth, reality, and also wanting to take any accountability for her behavior because that would promote shame, and she doesn't want to feel that. Because shame would tell her, I am a bad person. And I don't think she wants to feel that at all. So, what I find really interesting too is that she had said to you initially, oh, the emotions of your letter didn't bother me, but then says you left a manic letter on my door and basically was making out like, you've sent this over the top emotional message to me, right? I find that so unfair, rude, invalidating, condescending, betrayal. Your letter, from the sounds of it, may have been a lot, but it doesn't sound, but by a lot, I mean you may have written a lot, but it certainly didn't sound unreasonable given what you'd been through. This is the sort of letter you'd write when you're in an abusive relationship, which you have been in. Like, this is just disgusting behavior from Sally. Like, what I find so fucked up is the fact that she's making out that your response to her behavior is manic. Not to mention she invalidated you before, where she initially said your response was fine, and now all of a sudden it's not. It's like she just fucking decides how this, you know, she basically just gets to decide what's right and wrong at this stage. And then also one other thing that just stuck out to me that I was just like, who are you to decide this is okay or not? When she was talking about how you went for a jog less than a block from the front of her apartment, okay, I get why you might have done that. It happens. But I also just sort of think, the way she said that, that was uncomfortable, as if to say, like, you can't be near my apartment. when, it's probably just a common route. And even if you change your route, fine, which you've been very accommodating. Like, here's the thing, Harry, you, excuse me, have a pattern of bending like a pretzel and folding for her, trying to give her space, blocking yourself, doing all this stuff. You're fawning hardcore at this time. And it makes sense given the circumstances of what you're going through, right? And what I find really just so bad is the way she's declaring what's acceptable and unacceptable, but she's underfed you vital information. She owes you information about what she's doing, why she's doing what she's doing. She's abusing you by withholding necessary information, and you are basically left to try and figure out what the F is going on and to try and get your, parts of your stuff that you had together. By the way, when she says, I didn't realize we were in a relationship, well, why the fuck does she have so many of your items and belongings at her place? Like, honey, I don't share my belongings like that with my friends, especially when I'm sleeping with them. And by that point, we're not friends. Like, to me, it just seems like she doesn't want to just accept reality for the situation of what's going on. It's insane. And I also think that what was really bad too was the fact that she keeps again using this word boundary and tries to remind you, like, I have a boundary. It's like, no, girl, a boundary isn't a controlling word determined to tell someone what you can and can't do. It's an invitation for respect from the other person and also self-respect. I feel like she's using this as an opportunity to basically beat you over the head. It's almost like you challenged her control over this dynamic by, doing what you did with Venmo. You were trying to be reasonable and get stuff back so that way you could actually release yourself from this dynamic. And then she slapped you hard for trying to invade her boundaries with this. And I feel like she's speaking in half truths. Yes, in a way, you did violate some boundaries, but those weren't also healthy boundaries. They were walls. And I think that she's just been completely unreasonable to you. And I just also think it's so unfair that she also adds, you don't seem entirely self-aware about the way you're coming across. Honey, he's in a trauma bond with you. You fucked his head up. Like, yes, he's fawning and he's doing some things which he shouldn't be doing in this situation. But Sally, don't be projecting and don't be an asshole. Like, just no. No, 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 no. And I love how she lectures you on, I'm not the only one with trauma. Trauma gives us dysfunctional relationship patterns. I'm working through my own, obviously. No, you're not. You're an abuser. You're not working on your trauma. You're not working on your stuff. This is just abusive bullshit. It's not okay. And then when she goes on to say, the only way out is self-awareness, so own that. No, it's not. To anyone who knows the work that I do, and even watches people online, self-awareness will never be enough to actually amount to, to progressive change in therapy. And she's avoiding all of hers. This is a great example of psychobabble, where someone takes therapeutic language and weaponizes it against a person for their advantage and gain. You have been absolutely manipulated and gaslit the fuck out of, Harry, and I'm so sorry that you've actually gone through this experience because it's absolute bullshit. And I know from reading this that you have probably still have a lot of love for her and are probably very bewildered and confused off the back of this experience. But she has taken you for an absolute ride. There's really bad stuff here that she's done. And whilst I can understand, where a lot of this is probably coming from, because, she's got people in her life who she was close to who've died tragically. She's got a mum who's obviously had lots of, on and off toxic relationships, etc. But you got to understand that, this is someone who talks of trauma without actually working on their trauma. This is someone who doesn't understand what a boundary actually is. She's weaponized a lot of this stuff against you to make her feel safe and secure and to also justify her relationship and commitment issues. Those are issues that mean you need to go to therapy and work on it, not just talk about it. So, in all, and just rounding this piece up, I just want to say again, firstly, thank you for sending this to me, but also just I really do feel very sorry for you with what you've been through because I can understand how you've been really taken for a ride with this. And this just seems to me like a really, really bad case where you just were completely taken advantage of in this situation. Something to think about though, Harry, is there was some fawning going on at the end of this experience. That's normal off the back of what you've been through, by the way. Like, I'm not suggesting you have a pattern of fawning, but I think that you did, in some ways, have moments where, you did acquiesce very hard to try and comply and make things work well for her. So, lesson for the future is, please, actually, for yourself, learn to have boundaries off the back of this. Learn what kind of behavior you're not going to put up with. And I think that you actually should have left things after you sent that letter to her on her door. I think that you actually did a really good job with, the content of that. I think, you handled it really well. I know this is probably your first time going through this. It might not be, but if this is your first time, I think you handled it so well. Just please bear in mind that you definitely need to protect yourself and be much more boundaried going forward into dating and relationships, because you don't want to go through an experience like this again. But other than that, though, yeah, I think you did really well with, with this relationship to the best of your abilities. And again, I'm going to call it a relationship because that's what that's what you signed up for. I know you say it's a situationship. It's not. You got a yes from her to see each other. So to me, I'm like, you're in a relationship, even if, Sally doesn't want to see it. In any case, thank you again. So I will be back again for the next letter reading very soon. And I look forward to reading it out to everyone then.